This story comes to us from WYFF4.com out of South Kakalaki. That's where we get this story. It's just below North Kakalaki, which is below Virginia. See, I can talk like that because I got relatives from Arkansas and Kentucky and North Carolina. That's right. My great-great-grandmother, I've been told, was a moonshiner in North Carolina. And they say when the tax people would come up to the revenue people would come up the driveway to collect taxes, she'd shoot out the window with a shotgun and they'd all just scoot. And then, of course, my great-grandmother is from North Carolina. And when my grandfather was a little boy, my great-grandmother moved to California with my grandfather, and he grew up here and we all became Californians. But he was originally from North Carolina, my grandfather. And then on my other side of the family, my mother's side, my grandfather was from Arkansas, my grandmother was from Kentucky. There you go. And my uncle and my mother spent their childhoods in Tennessee, if you can believe that. My uncle used to sing in the church choir with Elvis Presley. Of course, they were both little 6-year-old kids. He was not Elvis Presley at that time. He was Elvis Aaron Presley, just little Elvie. But I digress. What happens with this? When you're off duty as a police officer, you know how they always say, look, I'm on duty 24/7. I'm always a cop. Okay, you need to remember that. But when they do something wrong or they violate some type of policy when they're not at work, they say, well, I was off duty. All of a sudden, they're not cops 24/7. Well, that's what one police chief is in limbo of, where the attorney representing the family involved in a fight with Easley Police Chief Stan Witten spoke exclusively to WYFF News 4. They said deputies on Wednesday released police reports and 911 calls of an incident involving the now suspended Easley Police Chief. WYFF News 4 filed a FOIA request, or a Freedom of Information Act request, to get the heavily redacted documents and court recordings recordings from the Pickens County Sheriff's Office.
Yes, ma'am. 757 Kiwi Baptist Church Road.
Okay, and you said you're the park ranger out at Mile Creek?
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, buddy, you're going to jail.
In the report, deputies say that Witten was visibly intoxicated. Bowman says he struggled to try and separate some of those involved.
It's ridiculous.
Now, Easley Police Chief Stan Witten is under paid administrative leave while an investigation continues into a personnel problem, according to Easley Interim Administrator Tommy Holcomb. The information released describes an incident involving Witten reported at Mile Creek Park in 6 Mile over the weekend. Now, the reports do contain profanity and racial slurs. According to the incident reports from several officers, they were called to a fight in progress just after 5 p.m. on Saturday at the county park at Keowee Baptist Church Road at Lake Keowee. When officers arrived, they found Witten, who officials said was off duty, with a woman identified in the report as his daughter and her boyfriend outside a black truck pulling a boat. Another man whose name was redacted was identified as the driver of a blue Jeep, also pulling a boat, with up to 7 children inside. Now, several times in this report, Witten is described as intoxicated. He had a little bit of courage. Not to mention he's the police chief. So, liquid courage and police chief. That's 2 courages mashing together. Am I right? One deputy says his demeanor throughout the investigation suggested he had a considerable amount of alcohol. And the deputy did notice a strong smell of alcohol coming from Witten. The reports detail a he said, she said between the parties that began when the driver of the Jeep asked Witten to move his vehicle so that they could get out of the park. An argument escalated into yelling that led to Witten ending up on the ground and injuring his forehead and nose. Now, whether he was pushed, hit, or just fell to the ground is unclear based on what deputies were being told by the individuals being interviewed. Of course, they're both going to tell, their story.
Hey, I need to get somebody at Lake Kiwi. There's been a big fight. I've got my kids out here who are up here crying. These people are insane. They won't get in their cars. They're holding up traffic.
Okay.
My child is hysterical because this chick will not get back in her truck.
All of the deputies on scene reported they were told Witten used racial slurs and profane language while yelling at the driver of the Jeep, his wife, and his children. Witten's daughter, as identified by deputies in the reports, got out of Witten's car and also began to yell profanities at people. Boy, she's raised right, ain't she? One woman was scratched. Doesn't say which one. Witten is also described in the reports as waving his badge around and continuing to yell racial slurs at the man, his wife, and his children. So he's like, I'm a cop. Look, I'm a police chief. And I'm telling you, as a police chief, why do they always get their badge and start waving it around? Now, he's drunk, remember, according to reports from the deputies that he appeared to be intoxicated and they smelled alcohol. And he's waving his badge around. When one deputy asked Witten why he used racial slurs, Witten told the deputy, because I can. That's right, he's a police chief, buddy. He can do whatever he wants, man. Who's going to tell him what to do? Oh, the mayor.
And the racist comments, we heard them. He was the instigator, but got the brunt of it. He did get punched in the face, witnessed that. His daughter, also Ashley, got punched in the face, and also her fiance.
Witnesses say Witten got back up, flashing his badge as his daughter allegedly screamed profanities at Bowman's wife, who was calling the police.
I tend to believe that this Witten guy actually did this because it's the mentality of some law enforcement officers. I mean, you have to take the commonly reasonable test, right? The common sense test. Is it reasonable that a police chief would get drunk and do this? Yeah, absolutely. Waving his badge, yelling racial slurs and profanities. Now, racial slurs, what does that tell you? He's a police chief. Think a little profiling might be going on in his department? Remember, he's the chief. He trains from the top down. What are his officers like?